Fighting was over, and the battlefield was clear. The archers would sweep across the ground and gather their spent arrows and identify which ones could still be used. Reusing arrows was cheaper than producing new ones, though they often required repair before returning to the quiver, a task that could take considerable time. For example, in 1343, an English army collected 7,000 arrows and brought them back to England, where they were carefully refletched and repaired at the Tower of London, a task that reportedly took 10 workers 6 days. The elaborate preparations Henry V made for his eu4 campaign paid off. When he set out to France in 1415, his archers were exceptionally well equipped. The results were clear by the sunset of the 25th of October 1415. The muddy battlefield was showered with English arrows and strewn with French corpses. The longbowmen had played a decisive role, helping deliver a crushing defeat to the French and securing one of Henry V's greatest victories. Thank you for watching the video. As always, we put a lot of effort into this video. Extensive research, double-checking, editing, animation, illustration. All of it is a lot of work. If you want to enable us to continue making these videos, please consider donating via Patreon. It's the best way to support us, because it ensures that we can fund these videos in the long term and don't have to cater to hype and trends, which wouldn't work out well for a channel about history.
Yeah, see, I think that's a good thing for me to keep in mind when I'm reacting to stuff. Reacting to EU5 or 4 or Vic3 stuff is fine, but I don't want to steal from my fellow creators. So I think I'm gonna just like share this guy's videos in the chat after I watch them, and watch little documentary things like this. Because I do like this type of stuff, and yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Siege warfare in Japan differed fundamentally from that in Europe. While European sieges were revolutionized at the end of the Middle Ages by the emergence of artillery and bastion forts, guns and siege engines played only a minor role in Japan. Instead, Japanese armies often favored direct assault tactics to capture fortresses. Japanese castles were also designed with a different defensive approach in mind, rather than relying on a massive outer wall to stop the enemy as in Europe. Japanese defenses were based on the principle of defense in depth. Attackers were forced to navigate a carefully engineered labyrinth of death, where defenders launched counterattacks, ambushes, and rained down stones, arrows, and bullets. The second half of the 16th century witnessed numerous spectacular sieges, during which fortresses were burned, undermined, or even deliberately flooded. In this video, we explore how to lay siege to a Japanese castle during the Sengoku period. The Onin War broke out in Japan in 1467. Its most significant clashes occurred in and around the then capital, Kyoto, where, allegedly, over 200,000 fighters from 2 rival clans engaged in what can be best described as a massive street battle that lasted more than a decade. By the war's end, Kyoto was in ruins, and so was the authority of the emperor. The political and social order collapsed, plunging Japan into chaos. Soon, dozens of rival lords, known as daimyo, competed for power. During this period, known as the Sengoku, or Warring States period, political legitimacy was based solely on military strength. To consolidate their positions, the more ambitious lords began constructing vast networks of fortifications. According to some estimates, nearly 40,000 castles of various sizes were built during the Sengoku period. Amid the struggle for power, these small strongholds changed hands regularly, making siege warfare more important in Japanese warfare than ever before. When we talk about Japanese castles during the Sengoku period, we are not referring to grand iconic structures like the Himeji Castle. These impressive architectural symbols of wealth and authority only began to appear during the more tranquil years following 1600 under the Tokugawa shogunate. Until the mid-16th century, most Japanese castles were what is known as yamashiro, simple mountain fortresses made of wood and earth. A key principle of Japanese military architecture was that a castle's strength lay not in the way it was built, but in its location. Because of this, building sites were deliberately chosen for their lack of accessibility. In the case of Yamashiro, literally mountain castles. Two abundant natural resources in Japan were utilized: wood and mountains. These castles were literally built out of the mountain. First, one or more peaks were cleared and flattened to create plateaus. Then the mountain slopes were transformed into simple fortifications. Ditches were dug between the individual hilltops and sometimes even filled with water by diverting mountain streams. The individual fortified areas were connected by bridges that could be dismantled or raised at a moment's notice. Finally, the felled wood was used to construct simple structures: palisades, gates, platforms, towers, and various residential and storage buildings. A reasonably well-preserved example of a Yamashiro is the Takeda Castle. From the mid-16th century onward, wealthier daimyos began reinforcing the mountain slopes with layers of stones and replacing palisades and wooden walls with plastered, wattle and daub constructions. As seen in this case, this innovation addressed the greatest weakness of the Yamashiro: its instability. Because the simple earthen foundations were prone to erosion and undercutting, they could only support small, lightweight structures. To solve this, builders covered the mountain flanks with a layer of pebbles before cladding them with solid dry stone walls. This gently sloping stone foundation enabled the construction of larger, sturdier buildings, laying the groundwork for the development of the traditional Japanese castles we know today. According to the historian Paul Varley, this innovation marked the beginning of, quote, a great age of castle building in Japan. The fortresses built in the second half of the century impressed European missionaries and merchant travelers who visited Japan. With their massive stone walls, these castles reminded them of the artillery fortresses common in Europe at the time, known as bastion forts or star forts. Their defining features were low, massive walls, with bastions designed to withstand sustained cannon fire and eliminate any blind spots for the defenders' artillery. Sieges on these fortresses were waged with shovels and guns, and often ended when the city wall was breached. Now, while the walls of Japan's largest fortresses indeed resembled European bastions, their purpose was fundamentally different. In Japan, artillery played hardly any role in siege warfare. At most, an attacker brought a few catapults, and even these were primarily used as anti-personnel weapons, rather than to destroy walls and fortifications. According to Thomas Conlon, an expert on Japanese warfare, the Japanese quickly recognized the effectiveness of Western cannons, but it took considerable time before these weapons were fully integrated into their arsenal. It was not until the siege of Osaka in 1614 that bombardment tactics comparable to those in Europe were employed. Until then, Japanese commanders preferred to rely on mass infantry assaults, precisely the type of assault the fortresses of the period were designed to withstand. The evolution of Japanese siege tactic reminds us that every era develops its own form of strategic thinking. The same emphasis on positioning, timing, and intelligent command is at the heart of Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus, who we'd like to thank for sponsoring this video. What makes Tacticus great is not just the Warhammer setting, which I'm a fan of, but that it offers a fast-paced, turn-based gameplay that does require thinking ahead and using strategy. It's not one of those games which plays itself. If you do not position your characters well enough, or if you don't have the right team comp, you're not going to succeed. Tacticus' gameplay cycle of unlocking progression and achievement is rewarding because it allows you to customize your forces and deploy increasingly powerful units with unique abilities, each with their own specific traits and strategy. Currently, there are more than 90 champions from 20 playable factions available. On top of the PvE campaigns, such as the Fall of Cadia, there are also PvP live events and guild raids, and an ever-expanding roster of factions and champions. While you can play and enjoy Tacticus for free, there are in-game paid unlocks available, which often come with a regular discount, and which I found can be worthwhile if you're wanting those later campaigns right from the get-go, or if you wish to play as a certain faction from the very beginning, ready to take the battle to the Warhammer universe. Use the QR code on screen, or click the links down below, and join Tacticus today. The tactical principle underlying Japanese castles was defense in depth. Unlike European artillery fortresses designed to stop an attacker at an impregnable outer line of defense, Japanese castles were not meant to halt the enemy at a single barrier. Instead, they consist of multiple levels, sometimes referred to as tiers, that attackers had to conquer one by one. The defenders would confront them, retreat strategically, and then counterattack to slowly wear them down. If the defense held, the enemy was routed before reaching the castle's heart. So, unlike with European fortresses, battles were fought not only in front of the walls, but also within the castle itself. The principle of defense in depth wasn't limited to individual castles. It also shaped castle building on a strategic level. Apart from their main strongholds, the daimyos built dozens of smaller satellite castles scattered across their territories. These formed a web of obstacles, forcing an invading army to engage with multiple fortified points. Hence, the intruder had to conquer or destroy every single fortress in its path. Otherwise, the garrisons could later strike their supply lines from behind. A single small border castle might not stop an invader, but it drained resources, tied down soldiers, and cost precious time. Multiply that by dozens of such castles, and even the most determined advance could be slowed or even brought to a halt. A famous example of such a castle network is the fortresses of the influential Hojo clan. Their main castle was in Odawara at Sagami Bay. As the clan's largest and most prominent fortress, Odawara stood at the head of a sprawling network of satellite castles, most of which were controlled by family members. These satellites operated independently in day-to-day affairs, but coordinated closely with Odawara to manage and defend the clan's territory. One of the most important first-rank satellites was Yamaneka Castle, which was attacked by Toyotomi Hideyoshi in 1590 and overrun in a single day. Beneath these first-rank satellites were sub-satellites, typically small mountain castles, and finally, at the outer edge of the Hojo territory, basic outposts, torides, which served primarily as rallying points for local troops. Such networks could expand to include dozens of castles, forming a complex and deeply layered system of regional defense. Another key difference between Japanese and European fortress architecture was that Japanese castles served almost exclusively military purposes. Unlike the fortress cities of Europe and China, which combined military, economic, and civilian functions, Japan had no such multi-purpose strongholds until the late 16th century. Japanese castles primarily functioned as defensive strongholds and administrative centers, rather than as shelters for the broader population.
Also, it's hard for me to
As time went on, fewer and fewer daimyos concentrated power in their own hands. They expanded their territories and raised ever larger armies. Most traditional Yamashiro were too small as rallying points for thousands, or even tens of thousands of troops. As a result, starting in the 1570s, warlords began to move into the plains, where they constructed new fortresses that not only served their military needs, but also showcased their authority and wealth. Alongside the modernized mountain castles, two new types rose to prominence: the Hirajiro, or plain castle, built on flat terrain and surrounded by moats and earthen ramparts, and the Hirayamajiro, a hilltop castle constructed on a hill within a plain. One of the earliest representations of this new, functional, and representative generation of castles was Atsuki Castle, built by Oda Nobunaga, the first of Japan's great unifiers in 1576. Commanding structures like Atsuki became the stages for some of the most spectacular sieges of the Sengoku period. There was no single blueprint for Japanese castles. They came in many forms and shapes, molded by their surrounding landscapes and the needs of their owners. Yet despite their differences, they shared one crucial feature. All were built on the principle of defense in depth. Every fortress was divided into multiple baileys, or courtyards, which attackers had to capture one by one. This shared structure allows us to define an ideal type, a simplified...
We're watching in the background, just commentary. That way I'll comment on chat if anyone pops in. And yeah, otherwise just treating it like a VOD. So yeah. So we did just get our government reform. Let's see what we can do here. We're going to take the expand temple right since we built a lot of churches. Oh no, we haven't yet. That's the marketplaces. Okay, we're about to be able to tech up, so that's good. Let's go re-siege Perugia. And we're going to integrate Naxos. Sorry, that's the Knights. Where's Naxos? I didn't realize those guys were a vassal. Now that the Ottomans are weaker, it'll be good to have a little naval base on an island out here in the Eastern Mediterranean. Let's see. Let's find out who the fuck cares if the Pope likes us at this point. Pope hates us at this point, probably, so why the fuck does it matter, you know? I'm gonna turn up the music in EU4, since I don't have anything on in background. So we'll turn that up all the way and turn the sound up too. Sound effects. Turn the audio way up. Okay, so what I'm thinking we're gonna do for the peace deal is possibly take just these or this down to here. So this, and this, and then vassalize Bologna. But it depends on whether they're still in the empire now or if they're out. Is that in a different trade node or is this in the Balkans? It's in the Balkans. So we're gonna take oh shoot, we have rebels here, don't we? Albanian separatists. We need to get this war done and take this over here. Okay, we're just gonna peace out. Depends on if we can re-siege this, but if we re-siege this in time before they, you know. Although, you know what we were gonna do? We were gonna upgrade this, but did we finish the mission? Let's see. No, we didn't. So we're gonna upgrade this one. Wait, we don't have enough dev. Do we have inflation? What the fuck? I don't know, maybe we can't do it in that zone. Oh, well, we're... Okay, it's because we're at war. That's why. But one thing we can do with our money is we can build that really good high-income church in Venice. Cathedral or whatever. And then when we do finish that one, we'll get a bit of a bonus to income. Because it'll immediately upgrade us when we build a church there. Where is it? Capital of Europe is this one. Yeah, so has a temple or a cathedral building. Oh wait, where is it? I don't know, but one of these gives us a bonus building in here. I tried playing a campaign as Venice the other day. We didn't win, but that's fine. I don't know why Austria's just sitting here, but I'm happy that they're covering my territory. I guess they don't have enough troops, enough navy, right? So they need to just stay there and repair, or like slowly like transport their troops back, because they're like